So.
I'm so excited to see so many members here after a late night last night when we heard the great State of the Union address by the President of the United States. We were so pleased that he mentioned violence against women and recognized the leadership of Vice President Biden. As you know, yesterday the Senate passed the bill. I know Mr. Hoyer, our whip, would love to tell you the numbers, and so I'll leave that to him to do. But here we are again. Last year, the Senate overwhelmingly in a bipartisan way passed the Violence Against Women Act. Last night, the Senate did too. Now we're calling upon the majority in the House to bring that bill to the floor. Delay is not an option. Every moment of delay is harmful to women. A delay when so many women are still forced to suffer in silence in the face of abuse. It's not an option when women fear for their lives, really, in their own homes or in the workforce. It's not an option when the safety of millions of Americans, members of the LGBT community, Native Americans, and immigrants are at stake, particularly with the delay in the House. There's no time to waste, and so I'm going to yield to Mr. Hoyer. He'll talk to you about the Senate, whatever else he wants to do. But I want to mention that you'll be hearing from some of the women leaders in the House on this subject. As you know, Gwen Moore has been the champion, has been the author of this bill, the bill we had then, the companion bill we have in the House in this Congress. Congresswoman Slaughter was an author of the lead author of the bill. When it was initially authorized in the 90s. Congresswoman Kirkpatrick is with us, who has a large population of Native Americans in her district and can speak firsthand for the need for this legislation. Of course, we're very honored to be joined by the once chairman, hopefully future chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Conyers, our ranking member, who's been a leader on this issue as well. Mr. Hoyer.
Thank you very much, Madam Leader. I am pleased to be here with all of you. There are mostly women on this platform.
Oh, you're kidding.
This is not a woman's issue. This is an everybody's issue. Every father, every husband, every brother. This is an issue about everybody. Yesterday, the Senate once again passed a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. 78 to 22. All the Democrats voted for it. A majority of the Republicans voted for it. And every woman member of the Senate, Republican or Democrat, voted for it. When I co-sponsored the original act in 1994, we had strong bipartisan support in both houses of Congress. There is no reason, and the Senate is a perfect demonstration of this, why that shouldn't be the case today. Majority Leader Cantor said during my colloquy on the floor last week that he cares deeply about women who are victims of violence at risk, and I quote, "We need to get them the relief," them being the women of our country, "the relief that this bill offers. That's our priority. We must move and act on this bill," close quote of Eric Cantor. I agree with Mr. Cantor, and the House ought to act swiftly, ASAP, to pass the Senate's version, which is supported by law enforcement, civil rights groups, and those who care for victims of domestic violence. I strongly urge the Majority Leader, Mr. Cantor, and Mr. Boehner to put this bill on the floor right away. One of the things the President said last night, with which I hope everybody agreed, the American people deserve a vote. They sent us here to act. Some will vote no, some will vote aye, but the American people deserve the right to have us vote. I am now pleased to yield to somebody who was my co-sponsor, or I was a co-sponsor of his. I should say it the right way, Mr. Chairman. I was a co-sponsor of his on the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. John Conyers, the once and future chair of the Judiciary Committee.
Very kind of you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steny Hoyer, Madam Leader, and to all of the women that are here. I want to hear what they have to say. And so now that it's established that I was on the Judiciary Committee in 1994, was working on the measure in 1993, and we have now had over a year when this law has not been in effect. And we are proud of the fact that the President included it in his remarks of only yesterday. And so all I want you to know, in addition to what's already been said, is failing to authorize this proven, effective legislation endangers the health and safety of women, children, and all victims of domestic violence and the needs of law enforcement and service providers. Let's move now. Now is the time. Thank you very much. Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers. While we're celebrating the Senate's passage of the Violence Against Women Act, and now it is time for the House to take up this bill. We have 201 co-sponsors of this bill, and there's a letter that's been circulated signed by 17 Republicans who say that they want to join in a bipartisan way to pass the Violence Against Women Act. That is the magic number of 218. Mr. Cantor, there is an aspiration among members of the House, Democrats and Republicans, to pass this bill. Don't delay. Please live up to what you have said, that we must move and act on this bill. Now we have the chance. Thank you. And I would yield to Ms. Slaughter, one of the original co-sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act in 1994.
Thank you so much, Gwen, and I'm happy to be here today and with the good news from the Senate. In 1994, when we worked on this bill, this was not an issue that was talked about very much. It was a sort of inside the family kind of thing, and nobody discussed it, so it wasn't so easy then either to pass it. I had a chance to speak with the Vice President about it last night and remind him of the fight that we had all gone through, and Pat Schroeder and I were putting the bill together. We're very happy to have had his assistance over in the Senate to get that done. But I'll tell you that the notion of what is going on here now was something that never occurred to us in 94. The idea that certain categories of persons in this country would be exempt from this kind of protection is an assault on our conscience. And we can't live with that. But the most important thing that I want to tell you this morning, as the ranking member of the Rules Committee, I can assure you that for the last 3 working weeks we've had here, we have worked on bills that were play. Let's pretend. Let's make believe we're doing something. Nothing fits that category more than what we're going to do this afternoon and the rest of the week. We'll be through at 1:30 today. We're going to just pass a rule tomorrow. We can't do suspensions because suspension is not allowed. And then we'll hang around here till Friday. What I think we have to insist on is that Eric Cantor put this bill on the floor and let us pass it and go home before Friday. We know the President is anxious to sign it. I was greatly pleased and cheered by what our colleagues did in the Republican caucus. And as Gwen has pointed out, if they don't do it right away, we should have a critical mass to get it either done by doing a special, making sure that we get it on the floor with 218. We have to get it done. It was really disgraceful. It does not say things that are good about us as Americans, that we allow this kind of thing to go on uselessly. So now let me call on Ms. Kilpatrick, I think is next. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Mm-hmm. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this legislation, and I'm hopeful that it will pass in a bipartisan vote. In Arizona's Congressional District 1, we have 12 tribes. Native Americans make up 25% of the congressional district. Unfortunately, Native American women are 2.5 times more likely to be assaulted in their lifetime than any other woman in the United States. Mm-hmm. I was born and raised on tribal land on the White Mountain Apache Nation. I've experienced firsthand the challenges that our tribal communities face. This legislation is important to my constituents. It strengthens tribal criminal jurisdiction over those who assault Native American spouses and dating partners while on tribal land. It clarifies jurisdiction for civil orders of protection. It improves grant programs to help tribal communities. And it strengthens assault statutes. Once again, we need to do all we can to keep victims safe and hold perpetrators accountable. I hope the House will work together to pass a strong, bipartisan bill, and I yield back to Leader Pelosi.
Thank you very much. I have to warn my colleagues that a vote has been called. Over 300 members have not voted yet, so we have a few moments. But I want to commend Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Congresswoman Louise Slaughter, and Congresswoman Kirkpatrick for their leadership on this issue. I do want to note, and Sunny will remember this, that Nita Lowey, Rosa DeLauro, and many of us on the Appropriations Committee worked very hard for the funding for this legislation that implemented it as well. So it was a time, though, where a lot of, as Congresswoman Slaughter said, this was silent. Like in my community, which is very diverse, I was hearing from advocates for domestic violence legislation, but saying our people won't speak out in the immigrant community. They won't talk about it. It's a silent problem there. Native American community in the military. Jack Murtha was a hero. He was criticized for bringing up the subject that it would even exist in the military. And now we know what the challenges are. Much of it is improved. Obviously, because of this legislation, many women and men have been protected from violence. What is the answer to the question of why is this bill not coming up? Let's vote on it. With that, would be pleased to know my colleagues, other than those who spoke, would be a resource to you in any questions you may have. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Has anyone here actually spoken with Boehner or Cantor about what they're doing?
Well, Mr. Hoyer.
Well, as I said,
And I need to be on the policy. Have you actually talked about it?
yeah, I've talked to Eric very briefly. Eric has indicated that he's supported, wants to move this legislation. Indicated he talked to Joe Biden. As you know, he and the Vice President have a relationship coming out of their negotiations on the cliff. But he also intimates, I don't want to say, he says that a lot of his members have had problems, which you have seen, which is why they haven't brought the Senate bill to the floor last time. However, with the majority of the Republicans in the United States Senate, majority voting for it, it seems that there is little reason not to bring this legislation forward. It's been worked on hard. They've taken care of the blue slip, the funding issue that was the problem that was articulated, why they didn't bring it to the floor. Now there is no such impediment, and I would hope they would bring it to the floor. As Ms. Slaughter said, frankly, they could bring it to the floor this week. I doubt they'll do that, but they ought to certainly bring it no later than the week we get back.
And another reason why we should not be taking a break to go home. Sequester is on the horizon. We want to avoid that. We have a responsibility to work hard to do so. Violence Against Women Act triumphantly passed in a strong bipartisan way, 78 to 22. Those numbers are stunning. Yesterday, and why can't we just bring up that bipartisan, strongly supported bill in the Senate, bring it up in the House? While they may have some members that have a problem with it, a number of the Republican members have come to me and said, we really need to do this bill. I don't want to vote against my leadership when we took the vote the last time, but I do want to send them a message that I know that this is a problem. I know that we should pass the bill, and I hope that that will weigh, that the number who do want something to happen will be as important as the number who do not want something to happen. But if they don't want it to happen, at least take a vote. And we could lose or we could win, but the American people will know.
We need to go vote.
Any other questions?
We need to go vote.
Okay? What's the time?
Can I just ask?
Just only one, yeah.
Just really quickly. Republicans
Just
are
one.
actually, and I don't know if the Congresswoman wants to, in terms of their problem is that they say that there's a constitutional issue with Native American, with tribal lands having sovereignty over being able to prosecute people who have committed these crimes that are not from the tribal lands.
But they're on tribal lands, and they're on tribal lands.
Constitutional issue with that.
It's an excuse, it is not a reason.
It is a glaring hole in injustice for Native women who are being abused. In fact, we have heard reports where perpetrators deliberately drag women back onto tribal lands so that they can circumvent justice. The counties or the state law enforcement have no jurisdiction on the tribal lands, and the tribal courts have no jurisdiction while they're on tribal lands. So the solution, they say, is to go to federal court. You take I represent, there are 11 tribes in Wisconsin. So you take Bad River, for example, the tribal lands. It's 5 hours away from a federal court. So what has happened is of those rapes, sexual assaults, domestic violence breaches, 52% of them are not dealt with in the legal system. And of those 52%, 67% of them are sexual assaults. And you heard Ann say earlier, Representative Kilpatrick say earlier that, it might speak volumes as to why you got 2.5 times as many, as much violence against Native American women because, perpetrators know that they can do this with impunity. Thank you.